It started as just another hike. I'd been exploring these woods for years, taking my camera along to document old trails, overgrown paths, or anything interesting I stumbled upon. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't looking for much of anything, to be honest. The air had that sharp, damp chill that comes after a morning rain, and the forest was quiet except for the crunch of leaves under my boots. I'd been walking for hours when I saw the fence. It didn't belong there. At first I thought it was an old hunting boundary, a chain-link barrier stretched between leaning metal posts. But as I got closer, I saw the faded yellow signs. No trespassing. Government property. The words were barely legible under layers of rust and grime, but they were still there. The kind of thing that should make a person stop and turn around. Instead, I found myself scanning the fence line, looking for an opening. I don't know what it is about places like that. The secrecy, the abandonment. It pulls you in. It feels like the rules don't apply anymore because whoever made them left a long time ago. I found a gap near the base where the fence had sagged. The metal warped, like something heavy had crashed into it years ago. I hesitated for a moment, glancing over my shoulder at the empty woods. The idea of turning back crossed my mind briefly, but curiosity won. It always does. The gap was just big enough to squeeze through. My backpack snagged on the wire, and I had to tug to get free, the sound of the metal groaning unnaturally loud in the silence. On the other side, a narrow dirt path cut through the overgrowth. The trees pressed in closer here, their branches hanging low and tangled like they were trying to hide something. The path was barely visible, but I followed it, a sense of unease building with every step. That's when I saw the building. It was low and wide, made of concrete blocks that had started to crumble under the weight of time. Moss crawled up the walls, and vines snaked through cracks in the foundation. The windows were shattered, the glass sharp and glinting faintly in the dim light filtering through the canopy. The front entrance was boarded up, the wood warped and splintered. Most people would have turned back right there, but I couldn't. The air felt different here, thicker, heavier, like the forest itself was holding its breath. I walked along the side of the building until I found a door hanging crooked on its hinges. The wood had been smashed inward, leaving enough space to slip inside. The smell hit me first. It was a mix of mildew, rust, and something else that I couldn't quite place. The air was damp and cold, and my flashlight barely cut through the darkness. The floor was littered with debris, broken glass, scraps of paper, chunks of concrete. Most of the rooms were gutted, their contents long gone. Old desks with missing drawers, rusted filing cabinets, and toppled chairs were all that remained. Graffiti covered the walls, some of it crude, some of it just nonsense scrawled in spray paint. I kept walking, my footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The deeper I went, the worse it got. The walls were damp to the touch, and the ceiling sagged in places where water had pooled. But then I found it. At the end of a long hallway, past rooms that all looked the same, there was a door. It didn't belong. Unlike everything else in the facility, the door was pristine, smooth, white, and flawless. It looked like it had been installed yesterday, untouched by the decay that surrounded it. But that wasn't what stopped me in my tracks. The words painted on the surface did. Do not open. They weren't just written once. The words were painted over and over again in thick, uneven strokes of red paint, covering every inch of the door in chaotic layers. Some letters were bold and sharp, others small and shaky, like they'd been written by dozens of different people. I felt my stomach tighten as I stared at it. My flashlight beam followed the sporadic lines of the warnings, the red paint stark against the clean white surface. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring. The rest of the building felt like it had disappeared. Finally, I reached out. My fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the door. The paint had dried long ago, but I could almost feel the desperation in the strokes, like the warnings had been carved into the air itself. That's when I heard it. It wasn't loud, just a soft whisper at the edge of my hearing. Open it. The whisper wasn't something I heard with my ears. It was faint, almost imagined, like the words were drifting directly into my thoughts. Open it. I stopped, my hand still hovering over the surface of the door. My flashlight shook slightly, the beam jittering across the flawless white surface and the chaotic red warnings. I pulled my hand back, trying to shake off the creeping sensation that crawled up me. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing down the empty hallway. Silence. The air felt heavier now, pressing down on my chest, like I'd wandered into a place I wasn't supposed to be. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing. Old buildings make noises, wind rattling through cracks, the groan of settling concrete. That's all it was. But it wasn't. The whisper came again. Open it. It was clearer this time, like a thought I didn't remember having. My hand twitched involuntarily toward the door before I yanked it back. I stepped away, the crunch of glass underfoot grounding me for a moment. My flashlight beam darted around the hallway as if I'd suddenly find someone standing there. But there was no one. Just the same peeling walls, the same broken remnants of a forgotten place. Get it together, I muttered to myself. I turned my back on the door and started walking back down the hallway, determined to leave this place behind. But I didn't make it far. With every step, the air seemed to thicken, my movements sluggish, like wading through invisible molasses. My breath felt heavier, and the whisper followed me. "Don't walk away." I spun around, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The door stood at the end of the hallway, pristine and silent, but something about it felt alive, like it was waiting. I should have left then. I should have turned and run, but my legs wouldn't move. The whisper wasn't just a sound anymore. It was in my head, crawling under my skin, pulling at my curiosity. "It's just a door," I whispered to myself. "Just a stupid, abandoned door." But that was a lie, and I knew it. I took a step closer, my body moving before my mind had fully caught up. I shone the flashlight at the door again, my eyes scanning the overlapping warnings. The red paint was dried and cracked in places, but there was something purposeful about the way the words covered every inch of the surface. "Do not open." The words pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat, in sync with the whisper that was growing louder, like the words were fighting each other. "You can open it." My free hand had reached out again, trembling as my fingers brushed the cool, smooth surface. This time I didn't pull away. The door felt wrong, too cold, like it was leaching the warmth from my skin. And then I noticed the lock. At first glance, it looked like a normal keyhole. But as I leaned in closer, I saw it wasn't that simple. The mechanism was intricate, filled with tiny interlocking gears that shimmered under my flashlight. This wasn't something you could open with a simple key. The whisper responded to my realization as if it knew exactly what I was thinking. "I'll show you how." I pulled back, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. "No," I said aloud, my voice echoing down the hall. "No, I'm not opening it." The whisper didn't argue, it didn't need to. Instead, it shifted, becoming softer, almost coaxing. "You've already started. You've come this far. Don't stop now. I took another step back. I could feel sweat forming on the back of my neck, despite the cold. You don't want to leave without knowing. It wasn't wrong. That was the worst part. I didn't want to leave. The door didn't just intrigue me, it pulled at something deeper, something primal. My curiosity burned hotter than my fear, even as every instinct screamed for me to turn and leave. The flashlight beam wavered as I moved closer again, my free hand reaching toward the lock. My fingers brushed the gears and they shifted slightly, their movement impossibly smooth. I'll show you, the whisper promised again. And I let it. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the intricate lock. The gears inside glinted, catching the beam of my flashlight, as if taunting me with their complexity. My heart pounded, a steady rhythm in my ears that almost drowned out the whisper. Almost. Turn it here, the voice murmured. Gently now. I didn't even question it anymore. The whisper wasn't just a sound or a thought. It was a presence. It didn't feel distant or otherworldly. It felt unnervingly close, as though it was standing right behind me, leaning over my shoulder. My hands moved instinctively, like I was following instructions I didn't fully understand. I traced the edges of the lock, my fingers trembling as they felt for grooves, tiny indentations I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. The mechanism shifted under my touch, the gears clicking faintly as they began to align. How do I know this is right? I whispered. The answer came immediately, calm and reassuring. You're doing fine. Keep going. I wanted to stop. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to let go, to leave the door behind and never look back. But I couldn't. The whisper was in control now, its guidance irresistible. The lock clicked once, softly, and the sound sent a jolt through my body. That's it, the whisper encouraged, its tone almost soothing. You're so close now. My flashlight flickered, the beam stuttering as if the batteries were dying. The hallway seemed darker, the shadows stretching longer and deeper, closing in around me. Another click. I felt sweat trickle down my back as the final gear slid into place. The mechanism released with a low metal groan, and the door shuddered subtly in its frame. It's ready, the whisper said, and this time it sounded eager, almost excited. My hand hovered over the handle, shaking violently. The warnings painted across the surface seemed to glare at me in the faint light, their overlapping messages screaming against the whisper's calm insistence. Do not open. I thought about turning back, about walking away and never returning. But my curiosity burned hotter than ever. What was behind this door? Why had it been locked away, its secret buried under layers of warnings and destruction? You need to see, the whisper said. Open it? I took a deep breath, my fingers curling around the cold metal handle. The surface felt smooth, almost polished, as though it had never been touched before. And then I pulled. The door swung open, with a low, bone-deep creak that echoed down the hallway. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it the faint scent of something sterile, almost antiseptic. The world on the other side wasn't what I expected. It was the same hallway, the same cracked concrete walls, the same debris-strewn floor. But everything was gray. The colors were muted, washed out as though someone had drained all the life from the space. The air felt heavier, like gravity was doubled. I stepped through, my boots crunching softly on the lifeless floor. The temperature dropped instantly and my breath came out in clouds of mist. The whisper was silent now, as if its job was done. Then I saw her. At the far end of the hallway, standing perfectly still, was a figure. She was impossibly tall, her head nearly brushing the ceiling. Her long, pale arms hung at her sides, her hands just barely brushing the floor. Her hair was dark, stringy, and fell past her waist, obscuring her face. She didn't move. Neither did I. My flashlight flickered again, and the beam barely reached her in the dim light. I couldn't see her face, but I could feel her gaze. I took a step back, my breath hitching as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. She didn't move. But I knew instinctively that if I looked away, even for a second, she would. I couldn't breathe. The figure stood at the far end of the gray hallway, her pale, impossibly long arms hanging lifelessly at her sides. Her hair, dark and stringy, shifted slowly in the still air as if touched by a breeze that didn't exist. My flashlight trembled in my hand, the beam barely illuminating her stark, elongated silhouette. She didn't move. She didn't need to. The sheer presence of her was enough to root me in place. I took a slow, shaky step back, the sound of my boots scraping against the floor far too loud in the suffocating silence. She didn't move. But I knew without a doubt that if I turned my back, if I let my eyes stray for even a moment, she would. The cold pressed against my skin, seeping through my jacket, my shirt, like the air itself was trying to push me out. My breath fogged in front of me, shallow and uneven, and my chest tightened as I struggled to stay calm. "Stay still," I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. "Don't turn away. Don't look away. Don't blink." I took another step back, forcing myself to keep my gaze locked on her. The flashlight's beam wavered, casting uneven light across her figure. The longer I stared, the more wrong she looked. Her proportions were off, her limbs too long, her frame too narrow, like she'd been stretched beyond what a human body could handle. The worst part was her stillness. It wasn't natural. It was too perfect, too controlled, like she was holding herself back, waiting. My foot caught on a piece of debris and I stumbled, my gaze dropping for the briefest moment. When I looked back up, she was closer. Not by much, just a few feet, but enough to make my stomach drop. She hadn't moved like a person. There was no transition, no motion. She was just there, filling more of the space, her hair hanging lower, her arms almost brushing the floor. I bit back a gasp, my legs quivering as I fought the urge to run. "This isn't happening," I muttered, shaking my head. "This isn't real. It can't be real." But it was, and I was the one idiot who ignored all the warnings. Oh God, what have I done? I kept backing away, my steps clumsy and uneven. Every few seconds my flashlight flickered, plunging the hallway into darkness for a heartbeat before the beam returned. Each time I expected her to be closer, but she stayed just far enough away to keep the dread gnawing at my sanity. Then I heard the whisper again. "She sees you." The words weren't reassuring. They weren't meant to be. The voice had led me here, guided me to this moment, and now it was content to watch. I reached the doorway, the threshold where the gray, lifeless world ended, and the decayed reality I'd come from began. My hand found the cold edge of the doorframe, and I hesitated, my gaze locked on her unmoving figure. "Close it," I whispered to myself. "Just close the door and leave." But I couldn't move. I could feel her watching me, even through the veil of her hair. The weight of her stare pinned me in place, and my fingers tightened around the doorframe as I struggled to tear myself away. I don't know what happened next. My flashlight flickered again, and for a split second everything went dark. When the light came back, she was just a few feet away, her head tilted slightly, her hair parting just enough to reveal the outline of a face beneath. I slammed the door. The sound echoed down the hallway like a gunshot, the vibrations rattling the walls. I fell back against the floor, my chest heaving as I gasped for air. But it wasn't over. The whisper returned, faint and mocking. "You shouldn't have opened it." I crawled back toward the door, pressing my weight against it, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the lock. But there was nothing. No keyhole, no mechanism. Nothing to seal it the way it had been before. My eyes darted to the small peephole in the center of the door. Against every ounce of reason, I leaned forward, peering through. Her face was right there. Pale, lifeless, with dark, hollow eyes that stared back at me. Her hair clung to the edges of her face, framing her in an almost unnatural stillness. I stumbled back, choking on a scream that never fully formed. The whisper lingered one final time. "You can't keep her in forever." I sat slumped against the door, my breath ragged, and my body shaking from adrenaline. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might tear through me. The peephole loomed above me, a tiny circle of dread I couldn't bring myself to look through again. The voice had gone quiet, but its words lingered. "You can't keep her in forever." I tried to focus on anything else, the chill of the floor beneath me, the distant groan of the old facility settling, the subtle smell of mildew clinging to the air. But no matter what I did, my thoughts circled back to the door, to her. My hands were unsteady as I reached for my flashlight, which had rolled a few feet away during my panicked scramble. The beam flickered weakly as I pointed it at the surrounding hallway, checking for anything that might help me undo what I'd done. There was nothing. The door, now just a blank, flawless surface, stared back at me, indifferent. The warnings painted across it had been my only guide, my only defense against what lay beyond, and I had ignored them. I scrambled to my feet, wincing as pain flared in my side. That's when I noticed it. A warm, wet sensation spreading along my ribs. My jacket was torn, and beneath it, blood was soaking through my shirt. I must have been hurt when I slammed the door shut. Maybe something sharp had caught me as I stumbled back. Or maybe I didn't let myself finish the thought. Instead, I focused on the immediate problem, the door. I tried everything, pushing, pulling, inspecting the edges for any hidden mechanisms. But the truth was obvious. The lock, the intricate system of gears that had kept it sealed for God knows how long, was gone. The door wasn't locked anymore. It wasn't indestructible anymore. Anyone could open it now. I felt vomit rise in my throat as the weight of that realization hit me. She was still behind it. Her pale, hollow eyes burned into my memory. But the door wouldn't hold forever. What have I done? I whispered to myself. I staggered back, leaning heavily against the wall. The blood loss was making me lightheaded. My vision swimming as I tried to think. There had to be a way to fix this, to warn anyone who might stumble across this place. The warnings painted on the door hadn't been enough for me, but maybe they'd be enough for someone else. I pulled a marker from my pack, the one I used for mapping trails, and started scrawling on the wall next to the door. "Do not open. Danger." The words felt inadequate, but they were all I could think of. My hands shook as I added more. "She waits. Do not look inside." The marker ran dry before I was finished. I cursed under my breath, my body slumping further as my strength waned. Blood dripped from my side, pooling on the floor. That's when the idea struck me. Desperation took over as I dipped my fingers into the blood, pressing them against the wall. The crimson smeared across the concrete, the letters shaky and uneven. Do not open. Leave now. I moved to the door itself, tracing over the faint remnants of the old warnings. My vision blurred as I worked, my blood staining the pristine white surface. The pain in my side grew sharper and my hands grew weaker with every passing second, but I didn't stop. Don't let her out! The words blurred together as my head grew heavy. I collapsed against the wall, the cold concrete pressing against my back. My gaze flickered to the door one last time, the feeble outlines of my warnings barely visible in the dim light. The world around me started to fade, the edges growing darker. My thoughts drifted as the silence closed in, suffocating and final. I didn't know if anyone would ever find this place. If they did, I could only hope they'd listen to the warnings I hadn't. I don't know how long I sat there, slumped against the cold wall, staring at the door. My body felt heavy, the blood loss dulling everything but the thudding in my chest. My fingers were sticky, trembling as I smeared more warnings across the concrete. Every few seconds, my eyes flicked to the peephole. I didn't want to look through it again. I couldn't. But something about its small black circle called to me, like it was waiting for me to give in. She was behind it. I knew that as surely as I knew I wouldn't leave this place. My hands, slick with blood, dragged across the floor as I pulled myself upright. My vision swam, the edges darkening as I leaned against the wall for support. I couldn't die here without making sure someone, anyone, understood what they were dealing with. I grabbed a jagged piece of concrete from the debris-strewn floor, the sharp edge cutting into my palm as I gripped it. The pain was grounding, keeping me focused. With what little strength I had left, I started carving into the wall. She waits. The letters were a mess, uneven, but they were deep, permanent. I moved to the door itself, dragging the concrete across its flawless surface. The sound of the scrape was grating, but it kept me going. Do not open. The warnings I'd ignored, warnings I now knew weren't enough, had to be burned into anyone who came here. My hand twitched as I scratched at the surface, the words blurring in my mind as the pain in my side sharpened. I dropped the concrete and collapsed against the wall. My breath came in shallow gasps, my heart hammering as my body fought to keep going. My head lolled to the side and my eyes settled on the door. The whispers returned. You can't keep it shut forever, the voice murmured, soft and mocking. I ignored it. I reached into my pack with the little strength I had left, pulling out a crumpled notebook and a pen. The pages were streaked with dirt and blood, but they would have to do. I tore out a sheet and started writing, the letters barely legible as the pen slipped in my unsteady grip. April 17, 1996. If you're reading this, you need to leave. Don't open the door. Don't listen to the voice. She's behind it, waiting for someone to let her out. If you see a body here, it's probably me. She did this. I couldn't lock it again. I'm sorry. The pen slipped from my hand as I finished. I folded the page and shoved it under a rock near the door, my hands shaking violently. My head hit the wall, and I let my eyes close for a moment. Just a moment. But then I heard it. A faint creak. My eyes snapped open as I stared at the door. The peephole was dark, but I could feel her on the other side. I struggled for air as I pressed my weight against the door, my bloody hands smearing across its surface. Stay there, I whispered, though I didn't know who I was talking to, her or myself. The silence pressed down on me. My vision blurred and my body felt like lead. I had done all I could. As the darkness crept in, my last thought was a quiet, desperate plea. Please, let this place be forgotten.